Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Log Talk with Pert Near Outdoors. This is your host, Billy, and I believe this is episode 97. 100 is quickly approaching. Excited about that. But this week, our discussion is with Brad Sisson and David Knab. Both are Rochester boys, and David actually went to the same high school as Jimmy and I, and was the same age as Jimbo. So we have a little connection with David, but these guys, we have connected with them over the last year, especially Jimmy reconnecting with David, and these guys are one of the supporters of our Shed Fest here. So Brad has a website called Pursuit Outdoors where he specializes in selling trail cameras. So kind of a little unknown website, but wanted to bring some attention to what he's got going on there. But overall, just have a fun chat with these guys and just kind of get their names and their stories out there a little bit and get to know them a little bit from my perspective, since I don't really know a whole lot about their backgrounds in hunting, and I found the story about how they became hunting buddies pretty interesting. So I think you'll enjoy this chat. Make sure if you're interested in trail cams, especially some of the higher end brands, sounds like Brad would be a great resource when it comes to trying to decide what you're going to buy, as well as where to purchase. Pursuit Outdoors is a landing spot for you and somebody local in the Rochester, Western New York, upstate area that you can tap on when it comes to questions and knowing the products, and not just an opinion base, but somebody who's using all this stuff and can give you some good feedback. So I think we had a pretty good chat here. Hope you enjoy. I had a wonderful weekend with my beautiful wife. We had a little getaway, first in probably almost 2 years. With having kids, we haven't had a chance to get away and do much. So shout out to my mom and dad for watching the kids for a night and letting us get away. We went to that Canandaigua Lake House, the old, I think it was the Canandaigua Inn on the lake. Now a brand new facility, brand new hotel and conference center, restaurant, all that good stuff. It was absolutely beautiful. I had a great time, great meal, and I'm tired. I'm ready to hit the hay. It's like 8 o'clock on Sunday night, and this old boy's ready to take a nap. So good stuff there. And lastly, just got a few days left to register for the Shed Fest. The application period will end on the 1st, so I'll let the shirts continue to sell up and through the 1st, and then once the clock ticks midnight and it's on to the 2nd, I will be placing the order for the shirts, and then we'll be processing to get those shipped out to everybody by the end of the month. And what I'll be doing during the month of April is we'll be trying to obviously everybody's still out shed hunting, and it's not over yet. It's definitely had some good prime weeks, but we're definitely on to the month of March, or month of April was my best time last year finding sheds. So I'm going to be spending some time continuing to search some of my key areas that I have not looked at yet, where I know I found sheds last year. I'm going to go check them out over the next coming weeks. But we'll be kind of compiling all the pictures that people have tagged us in and that have sent us, and we'll probably start posting some of those up throughout the month of April and getting some feedback from people. But ultimately, we have our group of panelists that will be judging them and awarding the best match set, the best side, and the best deadhead. So we've had some awesome applicants so far, and really looking forward to crowning some winners here at the end of the month. So thank you, everybody, for participating in that and for listening to this podcast. We know that there is a ton of hunting podcasts out there, and it really means a lot to have you tune in here each week and listen to us and listen to our guests. And we want to just keep growing this thing and keep bringing more and more quality content to you all out there. So if anything you could do to help us grow this, tell a friend, share a post about it on your story, Facebook, Instagram type deal. Just trying to help grow this thing organically and help create a good place for New Yorkers to chat about hunting. So that's what's up. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great week, and keep feeding them. Hello.
Yeah, that's your
Yeah.
name.
Squirrels got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
really, 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 really
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
That's good that you think that of it, because that's what deer hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving, and I'm like, ooh, there's deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a t-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
when you're
the
275 pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
the Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
yeah,
You know.
he's like,
he's up there slapping it, pissing all over everything.
is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor?
That's right. I know.
Why'd you say his name?
Hervé Villagers. Remember this?
You know what pert near means.
If you know what pert near means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pert Near Outdoors. That's what the rumor is, anyway. I think there's a lot of truth to that. You guys have kids or no?
He doesn't. I've got two daughters, and my wife runs a home daycare actually right behind this wall, so on the other side. So it's I know what he's talking about. Been there, done that before. So
yeah. You probably actually benefit from having all the kids around all the time. It probably brings the virus to you. You don't even have to go anywhere.
A chicken box party. Yeah, I don't get sick as much as I used to. I'll tell you that much. After a while, you build up that like immunity from it, and it's pretty crazy. But yeah, definitely true. The first like 6 months to a year, we were getting sick all the time. But after that, hardly ever get sick now.
Yep. It's so true. And we had an old, I don't know who it was, but sounds awful to say, some old lady. I don't remember who it was. It's just, I know it was an old lady, told me that either they get sick in the first year going to daycare, or they'll get sick all the time going to kindergarten. It's one or the other. So you're going to have to get them. Sorry, David, for getting all, parental here. You can just, sit back and listen to the old boys talk. But
I deal with it at Scouts. Yeah. Instead of dealing with little kids, I'm dealing with anywhere from 5th grade up to seniors in high school. Yeah. Booger eating.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Oh yeah.
Scratching the butt crack and then straight to the mouth. Yeah.
Well, I had an itch. Go wash. Leave me alone.
Yeah. Go get a stick. Make sure the leaf doesn't look a certain way, and
right, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is kind of how we roll. I've already hit the record button, so we're rolling.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think Danny, my buddy Dan, might jump on. It's his birthday, so I don't know what he's got going on. Hopefully he's having a great celebration and won't want to get on a podcast. So I'm joined tonight by Brad Sisson and David Knab. So thanks for jumping on here with us tonight, guys.
Yeah. Thanks.
And so kind of have somewhat of a unique connection with David, being that you and Jimmy graduated high school the same year, right? You guys were classmates?
For the most part. I actually got held back my senior year, but yeah.
That's not important to this discussion. What's important is that you started. It's not how you finished.
Yeah, we started, yes. It was a practice senior year.
Yeah. Sometimes, you were one of those bad boys. I think I remember you.
Homework was optional. Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently it wasn't optional.
Yeah. They tell you that right at the end, and it's like you couldn't have started with this, so I didn't.
Right. Exactly.
But both of you guys are Rochester natives, and obviously David from same hometown, Honey Falls, where Jimmy and I are from, and kind of connected with you guys over the last year. You and Jimmy especially have gotten back in touch with each other, and kind of funny because I never knew you as being passionate in the outdoors, but I guess I just kind of knew of you. Being a year older and not in the same groups, I didn't really know much about you, but I think it'd be kind of fun and interesting to get you guys both to kind of introduce yourselves, where you're from, just kind of some of your background, and then we can kind of just see where the conversation goes from there.
You want to go first?
Yeah. My name's David Knab. I'm born and raised in High Falls. Um, I've always been in outdoors, especially with scouts and stuff like that. I'm still in scouts at 31 now.
You a weeble wobble or what level you at?
So I got my eagle.
Nice.
And then I went to college, did all that good stuff, came back, wanted to go camping. The kids weren't really camping the way we used to camp. They were kind of grabbing cabins and stuff like that. And pretty much as soon as I got back in, we started doing more backpacking and canoeing and stuff like that. Really getting back out in the true outdoors and, away from the cell phones. And now I am the scoutmaster for the troop in Honey Falls, going on my 8th year.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So yeah.
What's the scouts? So my brother and I never participated in the scouts. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it sounds like I was listening to, I don't remember what it was, but I was listening to something recently and it just really sounded like, for kids, especially that don't have somebody to take them out and show them the ropes of nature and the outdoors and just being self-sufficient. A lot of it's being more just like self-reliant, not depending on other
Right.
people.
So
Like what is the scouts to you? Like, what do you get from that, or why is it important to you?
Well, it the whole motto is be prepared. Whether we're talking like coronavirus or anything in life where you have a backup plan or you have some sort of plan B. I guess that's a big part of it in my life is the what if factor. Though let's think about it and let's see how can we adapt. And okay, great. Everyone freaked us out and there's no more toilet paper, there's no more water. What's our backup plan? What are we going to do? The big thing and part I actually enjoy is kind of growing the kids and helping develop the kids into successful leaders, into young men. I'm seeing them from 5th grade or 10 years old or 5th grade all the way through their 18. So I'm there through the struggles. I'm there for the fun. I'm there for the bad. Yeah. So,
And those are formative years as a kid. I mean,
oh yeah.
Again, Jimmy and I were so fortunate. Our dad was so engaged with us, and I don't know what your relationship was with your father doing that stuff, or any mentors or anybody like that you had to you, but like we had that structure and that hard work and that stuff every weekend. But there's a lot of kids out there that maybe they don't have that structure behind them, and I think it's just so important. My wife and I were having that discussion last night just about life in general. Like we just are pouring ourselves into our kids right now, and even though they're so young, it's like, I've got Billy with me every time I go to the farm. If he's home, he's awake, and it's not almost nap time. Even if it is almost nap time, he's going with, like, because that's what I know my dad did with myself, and it was so important to me. So
yeah, that's basically how I was. I grew up on a job site. My dad was a teacher and taught out at Womoco out in Spenceport, BOCES 2.
Okay.
And I'd go in his classroom. Back then it was a lot more laid back and you could do that.
Right.
Go hang out in the classroom all day. Or go to the job sites with him after school. From that, it was hang out in the woods, go camping. He was always really supportive of me. And then really with me through my whole scouting career. I joined scouts, he joined as a leader and followed me through, and then my brother as well.
That's awesome.
Hunting wise, I didn't really have anyone to teach me hunting. My dad doesn't hunt. Big time believer in the outdoors and firearms and stuff like that, but never got into hunting. He can tell you how to butcher it right down, how to cut, what every cut is, but just never into the actual practice of the hunting. And that's kind of where Brad fell in. once upon a time in 10th grade, I was having a hard time in school, and he actually became my tutor.
Oh, no kidding.
And then kind of as we'll say reward or whatever for passing one of my regents was he took me out squirrel hunting. And that's where things kind of started.
Yeah, David pretty much got through high school because of hunting. It's kind of funny, to sit there and see hunting is an enjoyable passion and pursuit for a lot of people, but hunting was really sort of the carrot and stick. It was sort of the carrot for David to get through school, right? And he got into the swing of things, and that started falling into place, and he was doing better in school. So took him out hunting, helped him get his first deer actually, and that was memorable.
That's awesome. Is there a story to be told there?
There's a little bit. That's the Swiss cheese deer, as we like to call it. So, but David gravitated toward hunting, and I don't know if you want to share that story, but David got his first deer was a broken spike, I think it was. It was broken on one side.
It was a broken 6.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a 4-point by default. Yeah, my first time, really out there, really, and
how old were you?
Oh, it was 16. It was opening day of his 16th birthday, and I think I took him out and set him up in a tree stand. We were in an isolated woodlot in an ag field with corn all the way around us that had come down, and basically it was opening day of gun season. Put him in a tree stand. It was probably about 100 yards away from me, I would say.
Yeah,
and there was the deer come walking in along the edge of the woods, and
that was it. Let's see. I'm pretty sure I put 3 boxes of shells in that deer.
All 3 boxes were in.
Oh, we reloaded multiple times. Yes.
Yeah. I think he got a little excited after a while. And
first deer, first
opening day.
Beaver, first opening day, and it was they were light fields out of the Mossberg 500 20 gauge, and that was that was it. I shot the kneecaps out. I shot it.
Was that open sights or a scope?
It had a scope.
Did it?
One of the
that's bullshit, David. You can't
cheapo combos. Hey.
So
Nerve got the better of it.
I can bust your chops because your story is so similar to mine. My first deer. Yeah, my first deer was my first opening day of gun when I was 16, and I'll never forget. It was such a similar story. My dad, my grandpa actually dropped me off at my stand. It's like 6 o'clock. It was a little bit before sun up, or before light in the woods, and it gets to be first light, and I'm looking down over this little ravine. Kind of, we call it the valley. Death Valley, as we call it, and I just see deer just coming up the bottom of right along the creek bottom, and it's opening day. I've been living for this and hearing the stories my entire childhood, and I just see deer moving, and I'm just dumping, and I literally shot. I don't know how. I think I probably had 2 boxes of slugs. I shot and missed 12. What's that? 10 shots.
Right.
I'm done, and my grandpa, we had 2A radios. I come over the radio. I'm like out of breath. I'm like, Grandpa, I'm out of bullets. And he hadn't even gotten to his tree stand yet, So he brought me back more ammunition. And sure enough, it was kind of like a rainy, foggy day. And I'm up on top of this little valley, and there's a knob, kind of this finger that runs out, and out into the fog steps these 2 deer, and it was a couple yippers is what it ended up being. But I'm shooting open sights, and I shoot, and this deer goes running by me after I hit it. It was probably 50, 60 yards. Goes running by me, and I hit it at the bottom of the brisket, and it goes running by me, and it's literally, dude, its guts are falling out. Its intestines are falling out of it as it's running by. And this is my first experience, first deer, and I think it's important to discuss this stuff because those are like make or break times
Yeah.
for a hunter, because
Yep.
most of the time you're gonna not have a perfectly clean kill that first experience you have. And if you don't have the support from, whether it's your father, your grandfather, a friend, a mentor, somebody to help say, that's okay, this stuff is gonna happen, then that could ruin you. You may never hit the woods again because that could scar you. You know, like
Right.
my dad came right to me, and by the time he got to me, the deer had passed, but I had to witness what transpired right there because that deer fell down right in front of me.
Yep.
It was a bad deal, you know, but dad supported me and, you know, told me that, you know, that's okay. That's going to happen. You know, it's unfortunately it's part of hunting. It's not the way you want it to go, but
Yeah, it's nerves and excitement, right? I mean, we chuckle about the story, not obviously about the
No.
deer shots and all that stuff, but you know, it just, you know, I vividly remember shaking, couldn't stop shaking because he was excited. And you know, it's probably why he went through so many shells trying to get that deer down, because he just couldn't hold anything steady because he was so excited. And you know, after that, he did a really good job. He got his first bow deer the following season, and you know, ever since then, he's done a really good job. I mean, he got that deer was
2 years ago.
2 years ago now. Yeah, two seasons.
Two
ago
seasons
now.
ago.
And then you know, geez, I mean, this last like 3 or 4 deer average score of 130 inches.
Damn.
You know, so he's come a long way, and it's always good to see that. And you know, David and I have pretty much I started mentoring him, and since then we've pretty much hunted nonstop together for how many years now? It's probably been 15 plus years, I would say.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Well, so what's your background, Brad? So you're a little bit older. I kind of
Yeah.
assumed you were about the same age we are, but you just
I'm,
age well, I guess.
I'm looking at the big 4-0 this summer, so I'm definitely hitting that the peak in life, I like to say at this point. So I've been I work in a white collar job. I'm very fortunate to work for a big company here in upstate New York, and with that, just kind of climbed up the corporate ladder. But outside of that, I actually spent a lot of time writing hunting and fishing articles for a lot of publications. So while I was in college, I needed something to do, and I didn't really want to work a part-time job. So I reached out to a couple of editors. Didn't have any writing background, none at all. Wasn't like an English major or anything like that. And a couple editors gave me a shot, and like within my first 6 months, I had articles published in local, state, and national magazines. Within 6 months, I was in deer and deer hunting.
No kidding.
Pretty crazy. And at that time, I had probably no business or experience to be able to leverage and help others. But I think at the end of the day, I just wasn't afraid to give it a shot. So I did that for a long time, and that carried me through my college years until I got into my career, and actually had a job offer with the QDMA at one point to move down to Georgia and work for Lindsay in their communications department. And unfortunately, just the hard truth is, the industry just doesn't pay as much as it should.
Yeah.
I was working an entry level job at the same company I'm at now, and they just couldn't compete salary wise. It wasn't enough to live on. So I would have to do that job plus still freelance on my own just to kind of break even. Yeah. So it was tough. So I focused on that. And, at that point, one of the things that I'd really gotten big into right around the turn of the century back in 99, 2000 was trail cameras. And that kind of spurred interest. And David being very technology oriented, as most kids were growing up at that time, it was one of the hooks that I used. He loved cameras. He loved being able to go and check them, see the pictures of the deer. So I got into them pretty heavy over the years. And
when it was film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's going back. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I spent a lot of money on waiting on Walmart and CVS getting pictures.
Mom, can we go to Walmart?
So I did that, and started to learn how trail cameras could be used. And I found that to be one of the areas in my writing that I could really leverage a lot, to speak from expertise. Eventually got into some pro staff companies for like Covert and a couple other companies, and eventually started selling them, helping people out. I've been using cell cameras for this will be my 11th season using cell cameras. So I know they're real
So
popular
right from the
now.
beginning, really, right?
Oh yeah, pretty much first generation cell cameras. So I've been doing that for a while, and that's where Pursuit Outdoors came into play, because as my career took off, writing became really challenging for me to do, because quite frankly, it was a lot of time and effort for very, very little reward. Like the freelance money is just not there as the market went more digital. Very difficult to be able to make money on it. And so, I looked at selling trail cameras and started Pursuit Outdoors basically as an outlet to be able to support the hobby. And even though I still do my full-time job, which, is my career, Pursuit Outdoors has done enough for me to be able to really allow us to, go on trips and just
have
be
different
able
leases.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's done a really good job. And, if I didn't do such a good job in my own career, I probably would have gone full time with it, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's a good problem to have when I'm right on the border of the full-time basis. So I'm kind of at a crossroads with it, unfortunately. So got to decide what I'm going to do with it. But, the business is geared toward, the way I phrase it is sort of like high-end clientele. So instead of like having a business where it's strictly retail and you sell somebody one camera, I have a small client base that they're land managers, they're outfitters, they're other hunting companies. And so, with my background in trail cameras, they leverage me from a support perspective, being able to help them troubleshoot, match cameras to their needs and what they want to accomplish. And from there, it does well. I have like a 98% repeat buyer rate. So really fortunate in that space.
That's cool. And I think trail cameras is something because we haven't really done like just like a straight up trail camera episode, like where we just kind of talk about, and there's a million directions you can go on it. But I think it's something we should discuss, because this is a time of year when your gears, the snow's coming off. A lot of people's gears are turning to, now we're looking to see what deer are still alive. We've been keeping our cameras up all year round. I guess that'd be kind of a fun place to start. Like what's your approach? Are you an all year round cameras in the woods type of guy, or how do you guys approach it?
We run a lot of cameras though. I mean, like we're generally running anywhere from 50 to 75 cameras a year, across the calendar. This time of the year, usually March through, or I should say like February through April, we usually don't run cameras that much. We've got some out, but we use that as the opportunity to, quite frankly, take them down, do inventory, make sure they're still working, switch out new models, because with a business, I've got to stay pretty current with models and how they work.
And then troubleshoot all that stuff.
And then we put them back out in April for turkey season, and then they're out all the way out through the following February. So I mean, I'd say we run them 9-10 months a year.
We still have some out right now.
Oh, yeah.
We got a few cell cams out still.
Yeah, maybe like 15 or so out right now.
Yeah, the cell cams kind of make it a little bit easier to run them all year. Especially some of the cameras, our Cuddy links, they don't last that long. Obviously, there's so much going on there that they really are a drain on the batteries. But I've got a couple spy points, and I think some of the other brands out there, the batteries, I mean, they can last almost a year. Some of these cell phone cameras are so efficient that you don't even have to go touch them if they're in a spot you like and you're getting good signal.
Yeah, they're advancing. The technology is advancing pretty quickly in the cell camera space. So I'm a dealer for Cuddy back. So I know you've had I think you had Dan on in a previous podcast. So I know Dan and Jared and a couple other folks there at Cuddy back, and they're a nice setup. Where my recommendations with them are for people who have like limited connectivity at their hunting location, right? So a lot of times some of my clientele will be in like hollers, right? So like in Ohio, I've got a large outfitter down there, and they hunt bottoms a lot, and down in the bottoms the cameras don't get reception. So the Cuddy links, since they work off of the radio frequency spectrum, they'll send a remote or put a remote cam down there and have that picture go up to the cell, which is at sort of in a peak or in a field, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the service is, and it'll pull the pictures out of the bottom, as we usually like to call it. They're good cameras. They're heavy on battery consumption because of the Cuddy link component, right?
Right.
So they are a little bit of a drain on the batteries. That said, though, they've got, solar panels and external battery boxes that you can put out. And in fact, I think we've got a Cuddy Link over there in the background. That camera was hooked up to a 12D external pack and ran over a year, I think, without changing. So we set it out and just pulled it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And it'd been out since before turkey season last year. So
we bought a system for the farm here about this time last year, my in-laws farm, and when we bought that system, we bought one of those starter kits, which, what does that come with? One home and 3 cameras or whatever.
Yep.
And then we've added 6 more cameras to that, so we've got 10 on the farm. We love the fact that we only have to have one cell plan. We've got, all the pictures they come to our, couple of guys like it to their email, a couple of guys like it to their cell phone, so you can have it however you want it. So like the functionality there is really nice. But then we also bought a system for our cabin in Naples, and we've got 6 cameras on that, and we don't have we just have a regular, just a home. We don't have a cellular function to that system. And it kind of made it pretty fun, because now everybody at camp, instead of, one of the challenges we had on our property is that everybody wanted to go check their cameras all the time.
Yeah.
So then you've got people, oh, well, I'm going to go check my cameras. And it's like, but I'm going to go hunt up on that side hill in 4 hours. So having that system, we put them in those spots where we didn't want to go and interfere. And then it's just constantly channeling that information right back to the hunting camp. And we can just check the camera card inside the cabin, and there you go. So that system can work really nicely for people that are looking or in one of those situations where they want to have things channeled back to one home location or a cell phone batch with everything.
As long as you actually understand how the technology kind of works behind it.
Yeah.
I have a friend who had tried to do it, kind of on opposite hills or opposite sides of the hill. So like the peak.
Yeah, it wasn't going over. Yeah.
And it's not going. No. Well, on paper, it's supposed to go this far, and it's only half that. Well, it doesn't work that way, but
no.
Yeah,
it's common sense, like you gotta, and it's amazing the difference too with the radio frequency with leaves on, with leaves off.
Yeah.
Like we were having a really hard time at the farm, just going from one side of the farm to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's not that far, but just enough little terrain features and stuff like that. But as soon as the leaves come off, like no issue at all,
Yeah. But you kind of noted earlier too, right? With the time of the year, like, most people, when they use trail cameras, whether they're regular or cell cameras, they quite frankly wait until the summer months, right? Until they get back into hunting season. And, one of the things that I really try to coach and train my clients on is, now is the time of the year to be messing with this stuff. You don't want to be messing with this stuff in August or in September. And the reason why is, especially with cell cameras, is there's a learning curve with them to a degree, right? And it's amazing. I've been in that business for so long. Clients go through, it's almost like the stages of grief, if you will. Super excited, they got a cell camera, they get all set up, they learn how to use it, they go out there and they put it out there, and they get a picture that night of a doe walking by, and they're texting me going, this is like the most fun thing that I've ever done hunting. And then like 2 days later, they send me a text or a call, and they say, I think something's wrong, I haven't gotten a picture in a day. And it's like, it's probably because nothing walked by it,
right.
and so you have that learning curve. And, with like the Cuddy Link network, being able to go through those experiences and get them set up in a way where you can set them up and you don't have to mess with them through the hunting season, or, in the weeks or month, preceding hunting season. So now's the time of the year to mess with that stuff, right? Get the camera, learn how it works, learn the things that it doesn't do well, and you get real familiar with it. And, if you follow that pathway, generally speaking, cell cameras can be less of a headache and more of a help. You always you hear those horror stories around cell cameras not working or not sending pictures. And, at the end of the day, it's like any other, imagine your cell phone, every once in a while you're going to have a call that gets dropped or an email that doesn't send when you're trying to send it. So it's just really trying to figure out, how those cameras work and getting used to how to best use them, so this time of the year is the perfect time to go through and do that. And I also too, as a practice, part of the business to be able to show the new models and the technology, and that's exciting. But at this time of the year, one of the best things to do is to be able to buy cameras because you know what worked last year because it's been out, it's been tested in the market. You see feedback, you see how people are using it, what kind of results people get in large scale. And so I try to help, hunters really see the value of not always getting the latest and greatest and instead going with the most proven and reliable. If that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. So I guess, we talked about cutty back, but let kind of run through kind of the different categories of cameras right now and, some of your thoughts on them. So we talked cutty back, they are a little bit of both segments, both cellular and non-cellular. What are some of the other cellular brands that you're really impressed with and happy with and, give some feedback on them? Because I know my buddy Danny, we were just having this discussion today and he's hem hawing all over the freaking place about what brand he wants to buy. And there's just a lot out there. So
that depends on kind of what you can get $100 camera, you can get a $600 camera.
Yeah.
It's, you can go to Harbor Freight and get a drill, or you can go and get a brand new Bosch drill. It's, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah.
There's a lot of brands out there, and what I always try to say, and I sell almost every major brand of camera on the market right now. The real key is that if there was a perfect cell camera, it would exist on the market and it would own the market, right? And so you most people generally go into buying a cell camera asking things like getting the best I can get for my money, right? Which is understandable, whether it's $100, whether it's $200 or $400. The other piece too is understanding the cost. Well, how much does it cost me per month to run? And in cell cameras 3-4 years ago, that was a legitimate question because cell cameras were fairly expensive to run year round, 10, 15, $20 a month per camera in most cases. And that's gotten better as time has gone on. But in that scenario, they tend to expect sort of a Ferrari for the price of like buying a Ford Focus, if you will, right? Like it was really around expectations. And so in that market, at the high end right now, you're going to have premium cell cameras like the Spartan Go Live or the Reconyx, in the cell market. They're $500 to $600 cameras. They're expensive, right? So they're a niche market for people who are willing to put $500 bills on a tree and walk away from it, so to speak. Next level down below that, there's actually quite a bit of a gap. There's not a lot of cameras in the market that are in that like $200 to $400 range. It's just there's a gap in that market for that price range. Once you're in that 200 space, you're looking at the Browning cell cameras. They're a really strong brand from a camera performance perspective. They're probably one of the best. Like they have great sensing, they have great trigger speed, they've got excellent lighting and illumination, red flash, black flash. They're a really good camera overall, both in the regular and the cell market. And then below that, you're really into like the Moultrie, the Spy Points, and then most recently the Tacticam Reveal, which has been very popular in the entry market. I would say Tacticam made a big splash this past year, and their cameras have done a good job at that price point. So I think it's all about what you're willing to spend. What I would say is, if people are looking to get into a cell camera situation, look at what you spend your money on over the course of your hunting expenses. Cell cameras are the second largest expense that David and I have, or trail cameras, I should say, in large every year. The only thing that costs more is land. That's it, right? And it's kind of funny because people will go and buy a new bow every year, or they'll go buy a new gun every year. And we look at that and we say, that's okay. Bows lose their value within months. If you go and buy a $1,200 bow by this time, by the end of summer, that bow's worth maybe $600 on the market.
Right.
So, it's all about what do you want to get out of your hunting experience. And for us, trail cameras, are out there 24 hours a day doing something that we can't do, which is give us information. So, I always encourage people who are looking at the cost factor to sit there and say, if you think trail cameras can be a tool that you can use to make sure your hunting experience is better and make you more successful, we're spending money on it. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Now, like from my experience, I guess I kind of have, the cuddy backs I would say are on the higher end cost, and I also have the spy points. And I honestly can't say that I see a whole lot of difference in the quality of what I'm getting and the experience that I'm getting. What's your thoughts on is there that much of a difference between a Reconyx and a Covert, or was it Covert? Was that what you said?
Oh, Covert's up there.
Spartan.
Spartan.
Yeah.
It just depends on what people are looking for. Give an example. So like the Spartan Go Live's been on the market for 3 to 4 months now. And that camera it retails for I believe just over $500.
Jesus, my God.
Pretty expensive. But here's what you get with something like that. If somebody picks up that camera and walks away with it, it has it
explodes.
I wish.
Glitter bomb.
It literally will give you GPS coordinates. It's got an accelerometer built into it. So when it moves, it's got GPS. And it's built in a way where the Spartans have an internal lithium ion battery, right? So it's built into the camera. And so what happens a lot of times, like if your spy point was stolen, they turn it off. Guess what? Spy point can't give you any information. They can't do anything with it. They just say, hey, let us know if somebody tries to activate it. We'll do something about it. With the Spartans, I've tested it out. I've literally drove to a Walmart parking lot, checked my app, and it's saying, hey, you're in this parking spot within 5 feet.
Because it has constant power.
Because it has constant power. Right. So even if somebody steals it, they turn it off, and you can't access the SIM card in there because it's sealed inside the camera unless you start tearing it apart, in which case cameras get destroyed when you try to take them apart pretty easy. But so they got safety features in there. The other thing too is the Spartan will send you 1080p video, literally seconds, and it'll send you live videos. Yeah, the Go Live, I can hit a button on the app and I can literally see what's in front of the
in front of the stand or the blind or the food plot or anything at any time.
Yeah. So where those will come in handy would be, say you're crossing an open cornfield and you're trying to get to a hidden food plot. You can't see if there's anything in that food plot and you're trying to get there for an afternoon bow hunt. You set that thing up and you can view live on there and see if there's anything out on the plot, and whether something's out there. So like those are some of the things that you get with it. And the other piece too is like the quality of the images. Like you can zoom in and you can read license plates, you can read details on there. So it's all about what you want with it. And some people who want cell cameras, all they care about is, I don't care if it's a crappy picture, I just need to know if it's a mature buck.
Yeah.
And that's okay,
Yeah, and that's where we are. We're like, we just need to know what it is and when was it there. That's our biggest checkbox, So it is. That's I didn't realize that those cameras had the abilities to do that. That's pretty incredible that they can. So they must have, what the hell is the data plan, or how does that work? Is that through them, or that's got to be some significant bandwidth to be pushing to get that sort of video like live streamed.
Yeah, you can burn through data on it. Spartan's set up, you can do it 2 ways. You can run through Spartan Direct, where they have set plans and set timelines, or they have an arrangement with Verizon where you can actually add the device to a current data plan for $5 a month plus tax. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you have an unlimited Verizon plan, with you and your wife, you can throw that on there for $5 a month, and the only thing you've got to do at that point, if you're running through Verizon, is just pay Spartan basically an app charge of $3 a month. So you're paying $8 plus tax a month, on an unlimited plan if you've got a Verizon set up, and you're off and running, right? And it goes and goes and goes. And with the Spartans, I've got a ghost that's been on a tree for, it'll be 2 years in a few months, and it's on its. I just put its third set of batteries in. It hasn't come off of the tree in almost 2 years, right? And I haven't had a single problem with it, and the reliability's there. The other piece too, which you'll see with a lot of the expensive cell cameras, is the hardware and the components that they use. Spartan, if it's transmitting an image to you, say it goes through and you drop your call like on a cell phone, if it drops the picture in transmission, Spartan actually has a redial function. It'll say, hey, I didn't send this picture, so I'm going to wait a few seconds. I'm going to start it over. And so if you look at 100 pictures in a what I would call like weak signal area, that Spartan will send you probably 99 of them. If you look at some of the lower brand cell cameras, they don't have that functionality because they don't have the hardware and capabilities. You might only get 80 of those 100 pictures. And sometimes, and unfortunately, I've learned the hard way, sometimes those cost you opportunities. There's been a few times where I've had some missed pictures where I go check the SD card on the cell camera after the season's over, and I just kind of pound my fist on the table because there was a very clear opportunity and it wasn't sent, you know?
Yeah.
One of the other big things would be the app features and how accessible it is. Look at you're running the Cuddy Link. The Cuddy Link versus the Spartan is like night and day. We can go in, we can change the Spartan all around, change the video size, change times, everything. Where with the Cuddy Link, you got to be there in person to do all that.
You can change them remote now with the new setup, but it's just more steps.
It's clunky. I mean, it's to the point like they have that web version that you can use, but I've been in there over the last year. I've been into it maybe once or twice, and I just have the picture set up to go to my email, and they just go to my email. But there's also, and like you kind of get used to if you're in this cell phone, like I like to save pictures of bucks and then everything else I just delete, So like it's nice how it works going right to my Gmail, and then I can click on the picture and just save it to my Google Drive in the folder that I want it to be in. And it's just bing, bang, it's done, so it's kind of cool. But like the app side of it, there's a lot of really nice features to be able to have a clean app to be able to work in that's separate from your email and everything else, like, keeping that stuff cleaned up. But
I can, so with the app, I can set him up on a guest access on the Spartan app. It's nice. He can go in, he can see everything. If I want to give him permissions to change settings, I can give him admin rights. And, even if you want them, I can give you a code, and in 20 seconds, you can see all my Spartan pictures and be up and running and just be ready to go. So, but cell cameras are good. I mean, at the end of the day, they're just one tool, right? They're not end all be all. We use cell cameras a lot, but we also use a lot of other techniques like glassing and scouting. We do a lot of bed hunting. This deer here was shot out of a bed. So we're very big on what I would call like Dan Infalt, hunting beast. He does a lot of bed hunting.
Yeah.
So we do that a lot. We shoot a lot of our deer early and late. We don't kill a whole bunch of bucks on the rut. So
I want to get to that just quick on the trail camera discussion product wise. So we kind of hit on some of the cell cam stuff that you carry and some of the stuff that you guys have experience with and your thoughts there. What about on just your regular cell phone the regular trail cam SD card style? What are you seeing are some of the best cameras in each price point, that you might be selling or using personally?
We use a lot of Browning, a lot of Browning in that space. Browning's proven from a reliability perspective to be there, and performance-wise,
and they're just easy. They're just, you flip a switch and walk away. You don't have to do a whole bunch to it. Browning, and then a lot of Spy Point.
No, we use a lot of stealth.
We
use a lot of stealth, like the high-end stealth, right? So the DS4K line, Stealth is a large company, and they make everything from low end $20 and $30 cameras to high end $200 cameras, and they're two totally different beasts. The high end stealths are really strong for us, and they take exceptional video. It basically in 4K mode, but we use them in 1440 and 30 frames a second, and they're just phenomenal. So you get a lot of detail with videos. So we use a lot of those. We use a lot of covert cameras. They have good video quality as well. the majority of our cameras that we use on picture mode are going to be your Brownings and your Bushnells. So they tend to be pretty reliable. We don't use a lot of wild game innovations. Quite frankly, I don't like the fact that they don't have the ability to essentially have multiple pictures per trigger, and I despise the bungee cord attachments.
I know.
You lose those
and I'm not a big fan of that family and how they operate either. So I prefer to not send my money.
It's Y2K technology.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I keep coming back to like my favorite camera I have and most old reliable. I've got these Primos proof cams. I got one right here. It's a Primos proof cam. I think it's like an 001 or 01.
Yeah. Yep.
Dude, I bought this camera. I mean, this thing's broken. This thing's probably 6 years old.
Yeah.
I bought this it was still Dick's Sporting Goods before they had Field and Stream. No, it might have been Field and Stream. It's like $40 I bought that camera for. And now that same camera goes for like $80. You very rarely can find them for less. But dude, I freaking put them on video. I got audio. I got great quality video, and the cameras, it's kind of a cheap camera.
Yeah.
But I've tried some other, I've never really bit the bullet on that high price point, just stationary camera. And so I don't really have anything to compare it to, but I've tried a lot of those, the stealth cams. Obviously I got the Primos. I've tried the Wild Game Innovations years ago, and all of them seem to fail and just basically be useless within the first year. And those ones are the only ones that can get to kind of stand alone and not shit the bed on me. But
yeah, those Primos are good. Primos is owned by the same company that runs Bushnell.
Okay.
Right? So Vista Outdoors, so they're all the same company now. And they're hard to find. So those cameras, they go for more because they did a good job manufacturing them. And the model above that, the 2 model, it's a red flash. And in that camera, there's 2 generations of those. The first generation, all 3 models in that line had an issue with the springs, the battery springs. So that's where a lot of those cameras unfortunately crap out, because the springs go bad or they break on them. And so the cameras become unusable in a lot of instances. But the second generation of those cameras, the second model is phenomenal. It does a great job at metering the light, gives really good daytime images. And so if you can find those, for a decent price, those are good cameras and they're pretty reliable. But, with Vista buying them out, they've kind of reshuffled the deck and put a lot of the technology into the Bushnell line.
Okay, that's cool.
Primos is like a feeder line, as I would say, in a market perspective. So, but they're good cameras. The other piece too is, quite honestly, every brand of camera is going to have, cameras that don't meet sort of the bar. And most of it has to do with the fact that, like, every year camera manufacturers want to put out new lines, and that's a risk. Sometimes you hit a home run and sometimes you strike out, and you'll have good models within poor camera brands in terms of quality, but then you'll have really, like, the opposite will be true with the other brands. So at the end of the day, you got to treat each model as if it's its own camera, right? So like that model you have, that is a popular camera. It does a good job. But if you look at the next generation, they could be junk, Yeah. And what's funny too is, with the components that a lot of cameras are made from, they're actually leveraging old cell camera sensors, right? So up until the last couple of years here, a lot of cameras were using sensors in prior generation cell phones, right? So you would have a camera that would be like 2 megapixels or 3 megapixels. It was originally intended for a cell camera or a cell phone from like 6 years prior.
Yeah.
So it's so cheap. And so what you run into is, you can have a camera that works really well, and then they bring another production batch of that same camera 3 months later, and it can be totally different internals.
Just different components. Yeah.
You got it. Yeah. So it's unfortunately luck of the draw, but in general, the proven brands tend to have higher quality control, and that's really what matters. I think at the end of the day is that they're tested and they work, and Browning does a good job with it. Bushnell does a good job. Those are cameras that really stand out for us in the regular space.
Yeah, I think it's it's unique. I listen to a ton of podcasts, and a lot of times you just hear people talk about like this is the brand that I run, or like when we had Dan on, we just talked about Cuddy Back, but I think there's a lot of value to talking kind of wholeheartedly about the market in the industry, like what's out there, what are some good choices, how does that work? You've got one company that is under the umbrella of these other three companies, and they're sharing components and their feeder lines for other things. So I think it's important for the consumer to understand how that works, because you might think you're buying something totally different, but the internals are what matters, and a lot of this stuff could be very similar. And just understanding the way all that works. But you go on some of these forums and stuff or Facebook groups, and somebody's like, well, what's the best cell phone camera out there? And it's like a freaking dumpster fire, like everybody's yelling at each other, like you don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's like, dude,
It is. And what's funny is that in a lot of instances, all of the different brands, some of the cameras are exactly the same. They just have different shells, different cam shells. A lot of cameras are actually made from the same few small number of companies in China, right? Like almost all of them are built in the same city in China, and they go across all of the brands. In fact, some of the camera brands that I noted earlier, they're rebranded cameras that were previously sold under other brand names. And have two totally different perceptions from the consumers. A good camera or a not a good camera. Now, I won't go into detail which, but one of them was rebranded and has a really good following. And that same camera 2 years prior, with just a different shell, was not viewed as a good camera, right? So it's amazing how that industry works. It's actually a very small world over there.
Well, everything is like, it's like going to Wegmans and buying a jar of peanut butter. Wegmans doesn't make that peanut butter, folks. I hate to tell you this. Right. Somebody's making the peanut butter, and Wegmans is slapping their label on it. Yeah. So it's the same thing. Like, and my background, I sell school buses now, but my background has been in parts and heavy duty parts. And it's the same thing there. It's like there's only 3 battery manufacturers in the United States, period. But there's thousands of battery brands out there, but it's all the same product. It's just relabeled. So you have to kind of peel back the onion and understand that. But to the everyday consumer, they don't get the way that manufacturing works, and that there isn't factories in every city that are making the same components but different.
And a lot of times you're paying for the name.
Yep. We just keep saying yep. So, trail cameras are a huge part of you guys' game, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to get you on here, was to talk trail cameras. You guys, I will give you both credit. You guys were the ones that kind of gave us the idea to do the shed hunting contest that we're currently running right now. So thank you for not only giving us the idea and the kick in the butt to do it, but also, Brad stepping up and helping support us with one of the prize lines. It's pretty cool. It's really fun. That's what this has been all about, is really creating a network of, meeting people. And this is, a lot of the podcasts that are out there, they're nationwide. Like, I'm hustling hard trying to keep this local and have a local flavor to it. It's probably hurting me in the long run because I'm not reaching audiences outside of our market. But I think that there's a lot of guys and girls out there that I think once this gets in front of them, I think that it'll really catch, because there's a ton of people in New York that hunt, and they're in Western New York in particular. It's a huge.
Well, it's always, if you bow hunt in Western New York, I think it's almost impossible to not realize how many hunters there are. And, I forget the exact count, but I know it's several 100,000. I want to say we're in the mid to high 100,000s in terms of hunters in New York State. And anytime you look at the details and the numbers behind it, we're generally in the highest hunter per square mile density in the country, right? Like there's only a couple states that have higher density than us, with I think Michigan and Pennsylvania are ahead of us in some categories for that, but we're generally in the top 3 in hunter density per square mile. I know on one of our hunting leases, in Monroe County, I think it was a couple of years ago, we were on opening day on our lease, and he was on one end on the north side, I was on the south end, and between the two of us, we could see 5 other hunters from our
Yeah.
tree stands, not on our property, right? So I'm sitting there thinking, like, there's 7 of us in what I think, like, if you were not in, looking at property lines, but if you were just kind of measuring space, there were 7 hunters in like 20 to 25 acres, right? So I mean, you're talking a hunter density of 3 acres per hunter. What was funny about that is all morning that hunt, I was pretty bummed out because we were going after a very large buck that we had been targeting, and we thought we had a decent chance of seeing him on opening day there at that spot. So it was that quintessential, we could go to spot A, which we know we'll see deer, we might see a couple good bucks that we might take, or we go to spot B where it's either a home run and one of us sees the buck that we're after, or we're not going to see
Or
anything.
nothing. Yeah.
And, so we sat there until, I want to say it was probably like almost 10 o'clock, and a couple of the other hunters that got down and, probably went inside or whatever. There was 1 or 2 other hunters that were still out. And we had decided at this point, with the pressure, we were going to move to our other spot and, set it out for the rest of the opening day. But, there hadn't been any shots, which was very unusual, very high deer density in that space and on the verge of a popular village. And, so we expected seeing deer, and I think the deer they saw the pressure with everybody coming in. They just bedded down, and, they got safe before the opening bell went off. And so I started to connect the dots, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's deer bedded in between us, because if I'm just kind of looking at the layout of the land, none of these other hunters took a shot, and we know that we've got some decent bedding in our spot. So I went down and I did a slow walk up through the trails. And long story short, both David and I shot 2 bucks.
Really?
2 people out of the 7 to shoot deer, and we shot 2 bucks.
So that must have been midday. You guys ended up.
It was like 10. It was like 10:30.
Yeah,
it was
late
mid morning.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. It was the year we had snow on the ground. I want to say it was 2018. Was it? Yeah, it was 2018. I think.
When we got that huge snowstorm right before opening day. Yeah, that was 2018.
We went down, and we went down, and I got out. I got out probably about maybe 100 yards from David, and had to make a bend in a trail. And as soon as I bent the trail, I saw a deer stand up, and I could tell it was a buck. Couldn't tell if it was 1-year-old or a 4-year-old, but I could tell it was at least forked. And it took off, and it was along the edge of a creek, and it went across the creek and stopped in a little thicket. And it just stayed there and froze. And so I was standing there, and I was trying to decide, like, do I want to go after this deer or what? I didn't have a shot where I was standing. So I moved about, I don't know, probably about like 20 yards to the creek, and I could see it was still there behind some brush. And it was one of those, I think if you've hunted long enough, you want to be careful about what you shoot, especially if you got brush in between you, because you don't want to deflect it. But it was like just light enough to the point where I could get a clear shot in there and kind of zip one through.
Yeah.
And the tough part is I didn't really have a good view of the rack. Like, I could tell it was a decent deer at that point. I knew it wasn't a 1-year-old. I just couldn't tell what it was. And bow season was pretty tough for me. That was the slowest bow season I had in probably 15 years. And so I made the decision. I said, I'm going to take this deer, and I'm going to be happy about it, whether it's a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old. And I shot, and it came back, hit it real good, and it ran down into the creek, but it ran down into the steep bank and disappeared, and I couldn't tell where it went. And so immediately after that happened, I see it run up the bank side on the other side, and I'm like, David, there's a deer coming to you. You're shooting. I'm pretty sure I hit it. Like, kill the thing. David dumps it, and we're like, oh man, thanks, I appreciate it. You got my deer down. And he goes, I don't know, I think that was another buck.
No holes in it.
My deer was dead. My deer was dead in the creek. And this other deer waited until the shot went off and got up and ran out. And David shot that one. And so, long story short, we shot 2 8-points.
And we doubled.
No shit. So you think that, I mean, your gut was right that those deer just hunkered down. They sensed the pressure coming in, whether it be activity from days prior or noise or something.
It was just, it was just, it's in a bottom, basically, like sort of like a small creek bottom area. And the way the property lays out, there's a chunk of borders that come together on 4 different properties, and there were hunters on each each property, and it just shook out that way. And so unfortunately, it was real slow that morning, and I started to put the pieces of the puzzle together, saying there's deer in between us because nobody's seen any deer or shot. And just knowing our neighbors, like they're, brown, it's down, something's
if
walking,
anything's moving,
shoot, so put two and two together. And I actually texted him and I said, I'm pretty sure we're going to jump some deer here, so be ready. And it was like they read the script, so it worked out well.
That's awesome. Is that pretty much most of your guys' experience? You guys mainly hunting like lease land, or do you don't own any property or hunt any public, or what do you guys do?
We haven't hunted public in quite some time, honestly. Where I am in my career, my job gets real busy in November and actually ends tax season. So I'm responsible for some corporate tax filings. And so it starts to pick up in November, and I can get away with that, but I have to start being really selective about my time off. And I have to be very dedicated with it. So we've gotten away from some of the public hunting, not because it's good hunting, because there's plenty of opportunities, especially in Western New York with Letchworth and whatnot. But we've decided for the most part to try to get exclusive access because we don't have a lot of time. And one of the things that really frustrates me in terms of like recreation is like that example of that morning where I sat down in that tree stand. I knew we could have went to the other property and probably not ran into other hunters and had a good time. I sat down and I was just like, oh, I am literally looking at other hunters.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as relaxing as I wanted to be. So, because of that, it's us to control the experience when we're sharing land with others. And so we've gone the lease route in the past, I would say 3 to 4 years pretty aggressively because of that fact. And the other piece too is just quite frankly, in Western New York, the land access is getting very competitive. And so we have that. We've got a handful of leases and permission properties that we have exclusive, due to relationships that we have and work that we do for them. We help them out. And then on the flip side, we've got some property that we own and that we hunt on. I'm in the market to buy some property, have been for the past year, at least here in New York. And over the past 3 months, I've pretty much convinced myself it's not going to happen here because unfortunately, you can go and spend, $4,000 to $5,000 an acre and get good hunting ground and pay ridiculous tax rates on it.
The taxes were the problem.
Yeah. Or you can take the same money, go to Ohio, go to Missouri, Iowa, go to Illinois and take that same acreage, spend 20% a year on the taxes and be able to have much better quality deer hunting and lower, hunter density.
Yeah.
So we're definitely starting to spend more time chasing the out of state dream, if you will, and it's not to say Western New York doesn't have good hunting opportunities. I think it's just, unfortunately the environment is what it is, where it doesn't, meet our needs as much as we would like anymore.
Yeah. It's definitely challenging. I'm incredibly fortunate to have, land on both sides of on both my in-laws and on my family side. I'm really fortunate. I'm not ignorant of that, and I've got good friends that have farmland that they give us access to hunt with them. And, so I'm blessed when it comes to that. But if you're somebody that's new getting into the game, it's like you said, it's very competitive on the lease side of it. If you want to buy property, there's a lot of expense to go with that. And especially if you're buying something that's, maybe a ag property or something that's got, young forest or, CRP type stuff, and there isn't any timber value on there that you can sell and make some money to pay for your taxes or pay for the land. That's a huge nut to crack when you're looking at that. So yeah, I totally hear where you're coming from there. And, the out of state, the only place I've hunted whitetails out of state is Pennsylvania. I haven't hunted whitetails out anywhere in the Midwest, but, it sounds like a lot of fun. And, how did you guys get into doing that? Like, what was your first, was it you guys going together, or had you done it prior, or?
Yeah, we hunt. We pretty much almost exclusively hunt together. Like it's very rare for us to have, days of field where we've got somebody else with us. We're just kind of growing up that way, I guess you would say. We started going to Ohio back around, I want to say 2010 ish. So we started going around there, and what's amazing is just that transformation of even land access in Ohio. Back in 2010, we actually worked with the DNR and got a list of farms that, you know, were getting like predation permits, and basically the Ohio DNR is fantastic, by the way. Like I'm a huge fan of them. They're awesome. Called them up, had great conversations, basically said, hey, we don't know anything about hunting Ohio, but we want to go hunt. And they each wildlife unit sent us information on public lands, talked to like basically their eco officers or their version of them. And they would say, hey, this gets a lot of people. I'd actually go over here. And here's why.
Really?
It's like, oh my gosh. And he's telling you this. And, you know, at first, you know, your first thought is like, is he pulling our leg? But it's just that Ohio has such better opportunities when it comes to public land and, you know, in some of the better hunting places. And so we went there. And then on the flip side, we actually sent some letters out of state, and believe it or not, we got a lot of access back in 2010.
Yeah, just
random.
by sending letters, you know. Back then we were using Onyx, wasn't really around then.
Yeah,
it was all just GIS system, going on the county GIS system or county tax maps and looking them up in the phone book and going from there, and just kind of cold calling, sending letters. Yeah, I mean, that's worked out really well for us in the past.
Yeah, it's definitely shifted. And now, like, I mean, if you're going to Ohio, you can still get land access, but it's a lot more difficult because, you know, unfortunately, you know, Ohio is the shortest drive from a lot of those Northeast states. You know, like where I live, I can be in Nashville County in 3 hours, you know, and be in a tree stand in the northeast part of Ohio. And, you know, at that point, people are realizing it. So people are starting to pay $20, $30 an acre for leasing, you know, whereas before, you know, 10 years ago when we started, we didn't pay a dime. You know, we got the permission slip signed by the owners, and we were off to the races.
The permission slip is the biggest thing in my mind.
Is that an actual thing? Like Ohio has a permission?
It's a legal requirement. Yeah. So if you're on the property and you don't own it and you're hunting, you have to have a permission slip signed. And if you don't, you can get ticketed there. So it's a really great way to.
And it's not just a little like slap on the wrist ticket. Yeah. It's like you're not hunting for the rest of the year or a few years after this. I think it's a great way to combat, you know, trespassing and
if people understand that there's a consequence and you can't just say, oh, I didn't realize I was
sorry.
You know, and I think that's I mean, you guys, 2010, that's a long time ago. That's way prior. I mean, it is really easy to figure out who owns this property and what's their mailing address. It's super easy to find that out. Like, I give you guys props for that, because that's doing some serious legwork. You know, 11 years ago when we didn't have the technology we have now, you had to really go hunting for that information.
Yeah. A lot of the states, you know, back then they didn't have a lot of their plat maps or their tax maps online. And so you had to kind of do some calling and digging. And, you know, that's where like the DNR was really helpful. You know, like I remember talking, one of the farms that we hunted, actually, he shot his first out of state buck on that farm. The officer was like, hey, you know what? This farmer actually just called me to get the process going for permits. You know, here's their name and number. Tell them I called you. Literally got on the phone, got off the phone with the officer, called them, and they're like, oh, hey, you want to come shoot some deer? Sure, come on down. You know, we'll set you up and
we'll drive you out, do whatever, you know.
Yeah. It's like, oh, how many acres do you have? Oh, 600. Whoa. Well, in upstate New York, if you got 600 acres, you're a very rich person, you know, both in deer and money. Right. And so we're like, all right, you know, we went out there, signed the permission slip, and we were off to the races, setting stands and hunting, and it was solid. And then another one that we got probably about maybe 30 miles away, wealthy owner, he actually deer hunted himself, and he said, you know what, sure, come on down. And we hunted there and had a blast. And I've hunted that property a couple years and really enjoyed it, and it's a nice area, and we've done well there. And you know, we took a little bit of a break, mostly because my career was getting real busy, and David was starting his career working with his dad in the contracting business, and so we had a couple years off, and we got back into it. And last year we both got our bucks in October for New York bow season, and pretty much when David got his deer, we looked at each other and we're like, hey, we took time off in November and we don't have no tags. So what do you want to do? And we're like, we're going out west.
Right. We're not going to just sit around and be like, all right.
Yeah. So I think it's just the difference of going from good to great. If you're in a business space, you're probably familiar with that saying. And
Yeah.
just that difference of, hey, you had a really good result. Well, how do you take good from having a good year to having a great year? And so, in a few days we found some access in Missouri, and it wasn't the world's greatest property by the aerials, but it was enough for us to be able to go and put some pressure on it for 7 days
and get a 140 out of it.
Yeah. So
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So has it just been the one time you've been in Missouri, or have you been there?
We went to Missouri blind. I think like going out of state, the biggest inhibitor is people get scared, like they're nervous, whether they're gambling with their time, right? Like if you have a week off, like what happens if I go there and it's a complete dud and it's a waste and it's frustrating? And that's totally possible. I mean, like it can happen.
It can happen here in a place that you hunt, religiously.
Yeah, I went to Ohio one year, and my friggin' Dodge Dakota friggin' PCM went bad on a rainstorm. It got shorted out, and here I am in Ohio, and I had to have him drive from New York to come pick me up. And the dang trucks, was there for 3 months because there was an issue with getting a replacement PCM due to supply issues. And I mean, so it's like stuff can go bad, yeah. But you know what? Stuff can also go really well. October 25th, we had no intention of going to Missouri, and on November 18th, I shot 140-inch 8.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, it's just removing that fear of like, yeah, crap can happen, but so can really good stuff. And at the end of the day, it's just it's that mentality. And I would always encourage people, if you're in Western New York and you're really trying to pursue going after mature deer, there's certainly mature deer here in New York, but it's just a different dynamic when you start getting into those areas of the Midwest that just are managed and built and have the ability to grow larger, older deer.
And a lot of that's just because they don't have the hunting pressure, and that's just the fact of the matter. There's less people, there's less hunting pressure.
Yeah.
And it's
completely different habitat also.
Yeah.
Hold on, I just got directive from the boss. It's an easy one. Can I give my daughter a bottle before bed? Yes, ma'am.
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
And the ma'am is always important.
Yes.
Learn that
depends on the mood, but I'm feeling frisky, so I just say what I want to say. So, and I think there's a lot from what you said. There's a lot to be taken from that, not to be intimidated going out of state. And up until I met my in-laws and started hunting with that crew, my family never left New York State. We hunted our family property, and that was it. That's where you hunt. And since I have started venturing outside of my comfort zone, it's dramatically changed my confidence as a hunter and my ability to be productive. And I think, you both have spoken directly to that it's like, you've had success and you say, well, we have time now, so let's just pick a place on a map and let's go there and try to make it happen. And I think I'd be interested to hear your guys' perspective, but I think once you leave home and you can almost find success easier once you find it somewhere else. And then all of a sudden you start having more confidence in yourself and in your abilities to identify sign and identify a good spot. And the next thing you know, it's just things just are quickly happening. It's like, I mean, I saw that for myself in Colorado. It's like, I put myself in situations like almost immediately. And I'm like, I don't know anything about this sort of hunting, but I've taken what I know from home and I bring it out there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, one of the things that I've just learned over the years, if you can be successful in New York, killing what I always refer to as like, everybody has their own, I guess you would say, like measures of success. And for me, I always look at hunters, if they can, shoot a top 10% or a top 20% buck for that area, they're generally a good hunter, especially if they can do it, year after year and prove that point. And whether that's a 100 or 110-inch deer, or it's a 140 or a 150, if they're shooting a top 10 or top 20% deer for the area, then they're getting skills to be able to do that, right? In a lot of instances. And so if you're an East Coast hunter, and I would say like up and down the East Coast, there's varying degrees of hunting pressure, but if you're a hunter in the Northeast and you're dealing with, looking at, 7 hunters in a 25-acre block, or, if you're a hunter in, say, like, Southern Florida, and you're using climbers on public land and dealing with palmettos and the swamps and all that stuff, if you can go in there and you can figure out where deer, live, bed, eat, all that stuff, and their movements, you can apply that same, mentality to whatever terrain or circumstance you run into in the Midwest. And it's transferable. Like, if you can be successful in a high pressure upstate New York area and shoot mature deer, you're darn well going to be able to do that in the Midwest. Like, there's just, there's no way around it. I haven't seen a good hunter come from New York and go to the Midwest and not be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, and my buddy, one of the guys, John Peterson, that hunts with us and our crew out here, he went to Iowa for his first time, and I think it was on his first or second sit in Iowa. He shot a buck, and he was tagged out like right away. And they're weak, so they were near the border of Missouri. So he jumped over the border, bought a tag in Missouri, and on his first sit in Missouri, shot a buck. Yeah, it was like, damn, but he just freaking went at it, and
That's exactly it. And that's why we actually went to Missouri, right? So we looked at the tag structure and their season dates. This year their rifle season started on the 14th of November. And so what we did is we actually split, over the course of an eight day worth of hunting, about 10 days total time with travel. We split that, and we did, part of the time with bow, part of the time with regular season. And so that way, like, if one of us got a bow deer, we could, obviously sit it out a couple days or help scout, whatever, and then be back at it for gun season. And, the chances of that happening are pretty low, but when it does, it just allows you to kind of like mash the gas pedal and do even better. And, so it's good. And Iowa, same way.
We easily could have. If we changed up tactics, had a little bit more tools in our tool, there was more we kept with. He was just big. He's just
yeah. He was a big deer. It was definitely the biggest deer I've ever seen on the hoof, and it was one of those moments, unfortunately, that just going to be scarred for the rest of my life, because I was peeing at the moment. Is the only way I can phrase it.
Like literally.
So okay, so my first time seeing him. We're probably talking, I don't know, upper 160s.
Yeah, well, it was a big deer. It was to the point where it's like you stop trying to judge the size and you just go, this is the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life.
I saw him in bow, and he hopped the fence. I grunted, he hopped the fence. And no one tells you in Missouri, everything's fence off.
Really?
Oh my God.
It's not like 8-foot fences. It's like barbed wire cattle fence,
And they use pool ladders, like for your kiddie pool, to get over the fence.
Really? That's funny.
Yeah. You see them everywhere. It's kind of hilarious, actually.
You drive them down like what would be like 390, and that fence along there, they'll just be random like inflatable pool ladder, just so people can get dropped off and climb the fence and get over.
That's fantastic.
But so yeah, I grunted. He came in. He hung up probably, I don't know, probably right around 55 yards. And, I was still archery at that point. Just kind of kept scent checking, kind of doing loop-to-loops all over the place. And ultimately just kind of meandered back the way he came from. Then 2-3 days later, you had the encounter with him.
Yeah, it was opening day of their firearm season. And we sat in the morning. We were both in ground blinds covering area because, the property we were on was 120 acres. And I would say probably about 102 of it was savanna, right? Or like CRP type grass, like CRP field. And so we were covering ground with the rifles, and we actually had a decent morning. David had seen some deer, saw a small buck. I had seen it was like sitting in a zoo. I saw like turkeys, I saw coyotes, I saw deer. I just saw everything that morning. It was like, I didn't see a shooter, and I was still like, well, this is really an active morning. So I was, pretty happy not even pulling the trigger. And we got to about 11 o'clock, and it was slightly warmer than normal there. So we decided to break at 11:30 and get a quick bite to eat and shift around out to the other end of the property for the rest of the day. And so it got to be about like 11:20, and I had to pee real bad. Early in the morning, I watched this little spike walk up over the ridge to my right and drop down to a ridge, which where my blind was set up. I should have been able to see this deer, and it had been bothering me for about an hour, because this deer went down this little teeny tiny draw and just disappeared. Like I couldn't see it, and it was bothering me, partially because now I was sitting there thinking, like, this deer walked in an area I couldn't see. Like, what am I missing? Like, should I be moving, kind of thing, right? And so, at 11:20, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get up and walk over there and check it out. And so I got up, walked along the ridge, where the timber line was, and it's open timber. It's like shagbark hickory.
You were only like 5-10 yards from the blind at that point.
Yeah, but the perspective it changes, because it was it was going into a bottom. And so I'm standing there looking down. I'm like, okay, I see how that deer could have gotten away from me. I was like, all right, it's not the end of the world. I could probably shift the blind, the next time I hunt it and be okay. And it was just like, all right, I'm going to start heading over to David. And I was like, I got to pee. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start peeing. And I just said, man, but I'm midstream and I'm just looking around, and I'm looking down into the bottom, and I'm looking through these hardwoods, and I'm looking, and this deer catches my eye, and it's dead straight onto me, dead straight on. You can't see its back end or anything, or its back legs. It's just, vertical, looking right at me. And I'm looking at it, and it looks like that image. There's a very popular large buck image where it's like the evergreens in the background. It's got that really tall, typical rack, and he looked just like that. And it just took a moment for me to click, like, oh my God, like, this deer's been looking at me the whole freaking time I was walking over to that ridge. Didn't run, it was just doing what mature bucks do. It was walking through there and locked up. My first thought is, like, I'm peeing. I'm sitting there going, like, this deer's gonna run away, So I'm like scrambling.
Do I put it away?
I had my rifle shouldered. I had my rifle shouldered and spun it up and got it shouldered. And as soon as I got it shouldered, he did the 180 spin and started running right away.
Straight away.
And right as he got to the point where I got him in the scope and went to rip off a round, he dropped down into a little, basically, divot in the
kind of thing, yeah.
And it was like a vertical drop of about 6 or 7 feet, and I sent the round right over his head. Like I could see, because of the way the weather was, I literally could see the bullet go right between his rack, like
the vapor trail or whatever.
Yeah, it went right in between his rack, and I'm like devastated, and I'm just like, the biggest deer just ran out of my life. And I will never ever forget that moment as long as I live. And I think what makes it just worse is I am a stickler for time. So, like, when we agree to get down, like, he doesn't get down until that time. Like, if we say we're getting down at 11:30, he doesn't leave that ladder platform or that stand platform until 11:30. And it's just, we've learned that rule, and I broke that rule. And if I'd have just stayed in that blind,
2 minutes,
I'm sure that deer would have been visible from where I was in that blind, and it would have been a very easy shot. And it was frustrating. And the good news is that, hey, there's always next year. So he didn't get shot, that's for sure. We know that he didn't get shot. So
that's exciting. I don't know, man. I think you're gonna have a hard time peeing in the woods for now on. I have my best luck. I swear to God, I'm not just making this up. Like, I typically have my privates in my hand going to the bathroom when I see deer in the woods. It's like, it's almost like, I'm like, oh, I'm cold, I'm gonna take a piss. I'm like, oh, there's a deer right there. It's like it almost happens all the time. I don't know what it is. It must be like my internal, my aura or something. It's like, you need to get rid of this because something's about to happen. I don't know.
It was frustrating because I just knew that. I mean, it wasn't a dump shot, but I know, I had the 270, I had it set up on a bog pod in the blind, and it would have been as close to a rifle dump shot as one could get. And this deer was, in very open timber, shagbark hickory, where the trees are spread out 10, 15 feet apart. So it was plenty open. And I know that deer was quite visible from the blind when I saw it, for the first time. So I know that deer was watching me as I was walking. Like, it didn't just like magically, get into view when I was peeing. It was there and frozen the whole time, and I just didn't see it,
Yeah.
And, so it was unfortunate. So it unfortunately ran out of our lives, for, I don't want to say forever, because hopefully we'll kill it this year.
Yeah.
But it just, at that point we started getting on the deer and figuring out their patterns, and we actually narrowed down the 120 acres down to what I would call the right 5 acres. And we got very aggressive. We actually hunted the same 2 stands, made some moves with our stands. We hunted the same 2 stands the last 3 days. And the last morning we caught into some action, and I shot the nice 8, and David had a good buck too that came in 5 minutes before that. And it's just really about being able to make those moves, going out of state and starting to use what you learn in New York and kind of applying it to the terrain there,
Yeah. I think, I don't think New York gets enough respect for what we do here and what hunters here are capable of. I don't even hear New York like mentioned, even in like, when it comes to people talking about states that are like big hunting states, like we're not even on people's radar, So I don't know what it's going to take, and maybe it's better that we're not, but I see some of the bucks that are getting shot over these last few years here in New York, and it's like, at some point people are going to start recognizing what we've got going on here, and there are some good things happening. It seems like people are starting to let some of the younger bucks go, and we are getting some better quality deer, and seeing some of those giant non-normal bucks for around here.
Yeah, we generally try to target, it's all about perspective. Like in New York, for bow, the New York State Big Buck Club is 120-inch deer, right? So, in a lot of places, people look at 120-inch deer, and to them it's like, well, it's okay, I guess. And it's all about perspective. But I mean, if you're in Western New York, or Rochester, Buffalo, even east of 81, or west of 81, so to speak, if you're shooting 110, 120-inch deer, you're doing a pretty good job, right? Like, I mean, you can't, you don't sit there and think that you're not a good hunter. I mean, if you're shooting 120-inch deer, that puts you in the book, for New York State, for a big buck club. So, at the end of the day, it's just it's all about perspective. And David and I, we for a long time, we've always really targeted 3.5 and up, right? Like, we have good property, not great property. And realistic for us, we might have 1 or 2 encounters with a good 3-year-old, or the occasional 4+. And, over the past, I would say, since around like 2016-ish or so, we started moving into targeting the 4-year-olds. And that can be frustrating, because you can hunt all of New York and you can do everything right, and you can be, use your skills to the max. And just with the herd dynamics and with the way, hunter mentality is, you might not have an encounter with a 4-year-old in the season. And that's just the way it works,
Yeah, I think people can get super frustrated if you're watching the Outdoor Channel, or you're watching some of these big name shows, and you see 150-inch bucks getting shot on every episode, and then you try to go out and do that in your back 40 here. It's not realistic, So you got to understand that our 120-inch buck is Iowa's 150-inch buck. It's just the way it is, and a lot of that's totally out of the control. I mean, it's different nutrition, it's different hunting pressure, it's different weather, it's different. I mean, there's so many factors to it. So yeah, if you and I think you just said something that's super important there, is that when you're targeting 3.5-year-olds, you're getting one opportunity a year. It's not like you're seeing that deer. You might see him, but actually having an opportunity to kill him, it may only happen once or twice a year. So, and that's a very true statement. And I think if people listen, especially newer hunters, you gotta understand, like, you're not doing anything wrong if you're only seeing one big buck a year. Like, that's some of the best hunters out there are only seeing that big target buck in the flesh maybe
Yeah.
once or twice a year.
Well, that's where the cell cams really come in and
Mhm.
help a lot, being able to pattern and being able to recognize the pattern. I mean, that's how I got mine. That one was a late season.
Is that a New York deer?
Yeah,
They're both New York deer.
Oh,
Yeah.
damn.
Yeah.
both. Yeah,
Yeah, they're both New York deer. So I mean, the other thing too with cameras, you know, what we found is, you know, that they help you be able to recognize deer, right? So like you see what a deer looks like, and when you get into the tree stand, you immediately know what deer that is, right? And there's a lot of value with it. And you know, back in 16 or so, we made the commitment to start pushing toward 4-year-olds and up, and understanding that it was going to be sort of a go big or go home type of you know, experience for us. And we've been fortunate. You know, 2018 was a tough year for me, but outside of that, we've had some really good luck. And you know, the hardest part is making that jump from that 3.5 to 4.5-year-old target, right? Like if you can get over that mental hurdle of letting a 3.5-year-old walk in New York, generally speaking, you know, we find that you can be pretty successful. And you know, like I said, it can be tough, but you know, it's all about that mentality. And we've taken, I want to say, we did this the other day. Our last 6 New York bucks, not including the 2018 bucks that were opening day that we didn't really have a great chance at identifying, but going back to 17, 6 bucks, they all average, the average score is 131 inches.
6,
so so you know, it's, you know, it's just all about that mentality. And you know, the cell cameras help. You know, in fact, actually, when David was David was talking about cell cameras, we actually never got a single picture of that wide deer that's in the background. It's 134 inches, I think it is, and we never got a cell cam picture of it, but the cell cams helped us kill that deer. And what's interesting is, you know, I have this theory that cell cameras tell you as much by what they don't show you as by what they do, right? So I call it the void. What are you learning from the void, you know, in the cameras? And so we were hunting this field edge, this particular property that we had access to. The itself was 25, and it was one hedgerow and then about 10 feet into the timberline. The rest of it was all ag fields, corn, pumpkins, wheat, you know, in rotation with beans, all that stuff. So it was a pure ag field. And so, you know, we're literally hunting field edge in that space. And we had cameras set up at key points where those deer were coming out into the fields, you know, checking thermals in the evening and all that fun stuff. And what we noticed was there was one spot that we didn't have cameras up because it was kind of close to a house and actually a play set, and kids were out there playing. So we let that be, not so much because we didn't think deer would be out there, but we didn't want to get close over there.
Didn't want to deal with the neighbors,
you know?
Didn't want to deal with kids, you know.
Yeah, you know, from a safety perspective. And so we kind of let that be. And you know, it was the last day of regular gun season in 19, trying to get my years right here. Yeah, it was the season before last, 19. We had a wicked snowstorm, and I was back on the far side of that property, and I was hunting, and it was snowing like crazy. And I got down, and it was, you know, close to legal light. I would say I probably had about like 10 minutes left, but it was snowing so heavy, I couldn't see more than 20 or 30 feet. So I got down and started making a slow walk back. And in between that distance between me and the truck, I got about halfway, and the snow started to taper off where I could see, you know. And I saw on the other end of this field, I would say it was probably about 100 yards away, I could see a deer silhouette against the snow, and I could tell it was a buck, a nice rack buck. It was decent, but then my eyes immediately moved to a deer that was behind him, probably about 30 yards, and he was behind 30 yards, but was bigger than the deer in front of him, right? So like distance wise. So I knew real fast. I was like, that's a big deer, because I knew how far behind he was the other one. And so the deer up front saw me walking across this field in the snowstorm. And you know, I kind of just stood there motionless, and I watched. And that first buck, you know, he looked like maybe a 2-year-old if I had to guess. the larger buck in back was big, and one that I had never seen before. We had hunted it that season and hadn't seen him before, no pictures of, and I knew he was a shooter just based on his stature. And so the younger buck, I don't want to say busted, but he was worried and ran off into the neighbor's property. And the bigger buck, didn't know what was up, didn't see me, but he followed the other buck and kind of just trotted off, what bucks do in the late season when they're kind of nervous. And so I was like, wow, so I went and made sure that we didn't have pictures of this deer. And I told David about it, and my job was getting busy, so I only had one day of muzzleloader to hunt. So I said, hey, I'm going to set up in this spot, and I'm going to hunt it, and I'm looking for this deer that's coming out, and it's a big deer. So I hunted it, and I didn't see it, and I was kind of disappointed. And we got down to the last day. It was the Tuesday. It was the last day of muzzleloader. I had to work, and I said, David, I need you to go sit over here, because the only place that deer could come out into the field is where it ran into. And so, I was at work, I work late hours, and it was after dark, and
your phone starts blowing up.
My phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, damn it, I know what happened. And he just
can only mean one thing.
He started sending me pictures, and you know what? That the cell cameras, because we had them rung around that property, there was only one place where that deer could really come out into that field, which was the place where we didn't have the cameras set up. And sure enough, David had a hunt out there, and he was able to get that deer down pretty quickly. And that's where cell cameras come in value. Like most people would look at it and say, hey, I didn't get a picture of a big buck on my camera, but guess what? I saw it. I knew it was there. And knowing where all the cell cameras were, we would have had pictures on that deer. And he was using, maybe a couple acres of this ag field to feed on, and then bouncing back over to the neighbors, and
almost as a sanctuary.
Yeah, as a sanctuary.
Yeah.
And that's where the play set was, and the kids and everything, right?
It was bedded within probably 50, 70 yards, super close to that deer, or super close to that play set. And, it was surviving all year, not moving in a very big space, because if that deer had ventured anywhere into that field, you'd either seen it earlier or gotten pictures of it. And that deer was just staying tight to cover where there was no pressure, no interruption. And, late season food sources were doing their thing, drawing them out. And, I got a good enough look at them to be able to say that's a shooter, and, put David on it after I took a stab. And, it took 2 afternoon hunts, but, we got that deer down. And I forget how wide it is. I want to say it was 24 inches.
I don't
23,
remember.
24 inches.
Yeah, that's an incredible. I'm surprised it only scored 134, but the tines don't look too long, right?
No, it's a 12 points. It's got split brows.
Split brows.
It didn't get full credit for the spread because the beams were slightly shorter than the spread credit, so it lost a little bit there. But
it's a scoring system.
It's a beautiful.
It's a huge buck, man. That thing's incredible.
Yeah. So, and this one here was it was a 2017 buck, and that was a known bedding spot where we had previously jumped a couple of good bucks out of a bed in prior years. And actually the year before, funny story, we went to push it on the second day of gun season in 16. I pushed to David this small lot, it's only 6 acres, on a larger chunk that we have, and it's basically just connected through two hedgerows. And I pushed to David, and David and I coordinated on where he was going to set up. Unfortunately, David set up about 100 yards further away from where I thought he was. And so I pushed toward the spot where I thought he was. And that deer ran out in between us and never even got a shot. We both watched it. We're standing in between each other.
How do we shoot each other?
And the deer's looking in between us. And we're just like, oh, that's great. So he gets over and gets onto the next property line, and we couldn't do anything about it. So fast forward to the next year, we get some pictures of him, and we knew he was bedding in that spot. And we ended up hunting either end of the 6 acre woodlot. And he got up. I watched him get up out of his bed and shot him, with a bow. So it was probably a 10-yard shot, maybe 12-yard shot. So he ended up scoring 136, I think, gross, 136. And he's got a busted, he would have been a mainframe 10. He's got a busted G4.
Yeah. On that right side there.
Yeah, over here on this
Yeah.
side, he's got a busted ton. He probably would have been right around 140 when it was all said and done, but it was a beautiful deer.
Oh, it's a gorgeous deer.
Yeah, we've done a good job, and I think it's just all about the mentality. New York's got good deer, like you said. It's just
you got to do your work,
and you got to fight the hunters. Both of our bow bucks this year, we killed them. I killed mine on the 6th, and yours was in the 20s somewhere. I forget where, late 20s maybe. And both of our deer were killed within eyesight of other hunter stands. So it's all about just having that mentality and figuring out where they are and where they move, and
and being able to be mobile.
Yeah,
moving if you have to move.
Yeah.
I know you guys are venturing into the saddle hunting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other stuff I want to talk to you guys about. I see a part 2 coming because I'm interested, like we kind of just barely tipped our toes into a lot of these topics, and it's one of these days I'm going to get better at doing that, where I just have we just talk about one topic and it could be a 30 to 40 minute conversation. And this is what always happens with me. But a lot of these discussions, this is more about getting to know you guys and letting the audience get to know you guys. And then I look forward to definitely, doing more of this with you, because you guys definitely, you've got the success over the last several years to show for what you guys are putting together. And you guys are doing some good stuff with, real quick here as we kind of wrap it out. Brad, you've obviously got your business with Pursuit Outdoors, your little side hustle there. Definitely encourage people to check that out. And again, thank you for supporting us with the Shed Fest this year. And, but also you guys are the ones that started that Rochester area Whitetails Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
yeah,
you just want to.
Yeah, we started that this year. There's a lot of social media sites where hunters kind of gather and converse, and there's a lot of state-based sites or like regional sites. And one of the things that we noticed, at least with Rochester, is that there really wasn't a place for Rochester-based hunters to stay in contact with one another. And so we created Rochester Area Whitetails, or RAW, on Facebook. And the purpose of that, quite frankly, is just to put hunters in contact with one another. And, it's always that fine line, right? Because one of the things that we've learned over time is, unfortunately, in high competitive areas like, Rochester, the old adage of, loose lips sink ships, right? So we try to have that group. Right. One of the lines you don't cross is, you don't talk about
ask where,
right? You don't ask where, and you don't get into that, because
if you do, you're going to get booted out. It's that simple.
I witnessed that. I saw the trail cam dog put his hammer down. I saw
that. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do that. I mean, it's just a slippery slope. If you start letting people ask where, and it's tough too, because I've seen the good side of hunting, but I've also seen the ugly side. Like, in one of my earlier years, we were getting access, and we had a guy show up at my house saying he was going to burn my house down because we sent a letter to area landowners. And this guy's like, that's how people's houses get burned down.
It was bad.
Yeah, they're crazy, all over hunting. So it can go down a slippery slope, because at the end of the day, like, access and permission is so competitive in Western New York. I mean, how would you feel, if somebody was moving in on your property, right? And so we just created that rule just to keep it clean for everybody and still enjoy, the good deer hunting that is in the area locally. And on the flip side too, have a place for people to kind of, congregate and help each other out, have right? Fun. Whether it's, hey, there's an ammo shortage, but this local store's got 350 Legend in stock, or got 20 gauge slugs, or whatever, whatever it is, and just be able to share information and go from there. And so I don't ever expect it to be a 20,000 member group, but it might be a few thousand people. It's just able to bring the community together and kind of share opportunities and share news and all that stuff. So it's just a cool place to hang out and kind of have a local twist on it.
Yeah, for sure. David, you got the cartel calls shirt on.
I do.
So, I mean, is the cartel calls man? Is he like supposed to always be undercover and nobody knows exactly who he is, or what's the deal with that? Because I think I might maybe know who it is, but I don't know if I'm supposed to know who it is.
I would say it's probably supposed to be just like you said, right?
Yeah.
Watch the videos, and one of the things I will say is as much as I love deer hunting, I am the world's worst turkey hunter. Like I am just atrocious. Like I am. I'll be honest with you. Part of it is that we don't have great turkey ground, right? I mean, we have good deer hunting ground, but we have fringe turkey property where we occasionally have turkeys come through, and you have to kind of perfect storm it to really get a good opportunity at a bird. And I'm lousy at it, but last year, man, I tell you what, we had two birds that were literally just fighting each other, and they came together. It was almost like a monster movie, like Godzilla and King Kong, because they both came from opposite ends of the property, and we called them in with the cartel calls, and it worked out great. It was awesome, and we ended up. I shot the biggest bird I've ever shot by far, to the point where I'm getting mounted now. Full mount. I would never think in my life that I would ever spend that kind of money on a full turkey mount, but it was just such an awesome experience, and those calls did the trick. And if it can help somebody like me who's a lousy turkey hunter out, it can do the job for somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And then I got my first. My buddy took me out. The owner of the company there took me out one of his places, and was able to film it all. Basically walk me through, how you're supposed to use the call, how you're supposed to do everything real quick at like 3 a.m. while we're driving. Like, you've been doing it wrong your whole life. Try this. And yeah, it just worked out great. We were able to get it on film and everything. So
no kidding. That's awesome. It's a Rochester based company, correct? Yes.
It's
yes. Blink twice if it's yes. Okay.
It's very local. Yes.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you don't know what I'm talking about, just go check out Cartel Game Calls, or is it Game Calls or Turkey Calls?
Cartel Custom Calls, and then there's Cartel Game Calls. Yep. Cartel Custom they're doing mostly turkeys. Cartel Game, they're getting into elk. It's the same company. It's the same. Just a little different branding.
But just go check out the videos. It's like the whole idea of it. It's like a drug dealer, and it's just awesome. It's fantastic. Like,
it's like Gangland, right?
Gangland, or Drugsing.
Yeah, it's like that, where they got the masked person, or their voices kind of modulated and all that stuff. So it's
cool.
Pretty entertaining to say the least. So
your I don't know if you guys can see this. Your calls.
Yeah.
A
little dime bag action.
Yeah, I didn't say that. Right.
I did. That's fine.
But yeah, they come in little bags. Yep.
Yeah, they're good calls. Like I said, I mean, the guy who runs it, he's pretty well versed in turkey hunting, and like I said, gave us a few calls to try out last year. And for me, being as lousy of a turkey hunter as I am, I was amazed at what they did. And I encourage everybody to check them out. They're definitely, up and coming, and being that they're local too, it's always nice to support local companies like that.
Yeah. That's what we're all about here. All of us, apparently. So, all right. I could clearly talk to you guys all night long, but nature is calling. So I'm going to go shut my eyes and feed a baby a bottle, and we'll have to definitely catch up again, because I enjoyed chatting with you guys. And I'll message you, David, if I can get both of your cell phone numbers too. It'd be easier to stay in touch via cell phone than that. And we'll do something again towards, middle of the summer or whatever, give some people some thoughts on, getting ready and scouting to get ready to kill that buck in the first week of archery season.
Yeah. It's when they moved the opener to October 1st, at least in the southern zone, I think it was a game changer. It's right on the border of, soybeans, going sour as far as, food source. So we're I would say half of my archery deer since I think it was 2012 when they did the change. I think half of my archery bucks have been shot within the first 2 weeks of the season. So almost exclusively, hunting beds and food patterns. So love to talk about that, because I think those are game changers when it comes to mentality. A lot of people rely on the rut, and
it's very unpredictable.
Yeah, you're wishing at that point, hoping.
Yep. All right, boys.
Awesome.
Peace out.
Thanks again, man.
Thank you. Make sure you listen, and we'll keep this puppy growing. So thank you, boys. Make sure to check out what Brad and David have got going on over with Pursuit Outdoors on the interwebs. So thanks, boys.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
We'll see you.
Yeah, see you.
Bye.